Okay, so yeah, happy Tuesday and welcome to another of the Teacher Skills PD series for 2022-30. Today's session is all about Panopto, CSU replay, and I'm joined this morning by Plunkett from the Learning Technology Unit in DIT, and Di has gracefully agreed to join me in talking about replay, as she's one of the main supporters of this particular product and has obviously a level of knowledge and expertise about its intricacies that that a lot of us don't have. So by all means, feel free to utilize the chat pod, etc., as we go through to today's session. We're pretty low on formality here when we run these. So if you've got things that you want to raise outside of what I'm talking about, the chat pod is a good place to do so. Otherwise, you're welcome to use your sort of reactions or put your hand up or come off mute, pull me up, etc., and we'll be getting to your questions as we can. I will progressively share slides and other documents, etc., that I talk about throughout the session, and I'll just do that again for those of you that got here a bit closer to the mark. Here's a copy of the slides that I'm going through this morning. So that'll have all the hyperlinks, etc., for things that I'm pointing to as we go. All right, so look, let's get into it. What we're going to be talking today about is essentially why these two terms get thrown around synonymously, replay and Panopto. We'll look at some exemplars about how the tool's used around the traps in different subject sites for different purposes. We'll look at the prospect of using Panopto in your own subject or adding it if it's not there. We'll have a walkthrough in the tool interface itself and have a look at how that works in terms of making recordings, editing recordings, some of the additional functionalities of those of the tool set. And also we'll look at the prospect of sharing those resources elsewhere and how that works. If it's going to be within learning materials, for example, links to other things, getting video out of Panopto maybe to put into something else, like YouTube, for example. And time permitting, we'll get into some questions around assessment with the tool set and Q&A, etc. So high hopes to get through all of those things. We'll see how we go. And as I said, if you've got questions along the way, pop them in the chat or come off mute, etc., and we'll deal with those. Okay, so look, firstly, I'd like to look at this question around why we hear these two terms used together. Quite often, CSU replay and Panopto, this does pop up for us in DLT quite a lot, but essentially, CSU for many years has used the term CSU replay to capture the solution that the university uses for lecture capture. So that goes back looking at things, platforms like Echo 360, Lectopia before that, and other tools that we've used at different times to capture lectures. No matter what the product was that we used for that, it was branded within subject sites, for example, as CSU replay. And the current iteration, the current tool that we've had in place now for, I want to say 4 years, maybe almost, we must be getting close to that, is Panopto. So that is the tool that we use, Panopto. It is branded within your I2 sites as CSU replay. So when you see those two terms, they're talking about exactly the same thing. And when the university, if the university switches to another product for lecture capture at some point in time, it'll still be called CSU replay, but potentially look out for the brackets afterwards to tell you exactly what tool they're using for that, that process. All right, so that's the title, and that's why we get those two terms appearing next to each other. And it's a term that we use for capture of video, creation of video, and for distributing video within our subject sites. It starts to get a little bit more convoluted in more recent years because we have other tools that we also use for video, such as Zoom, which I'm sure, us being in that platform more and more often these days, and people look for solutions in and around video with that tool as well. So, the lines tend to blur a little bit at times, and we can talk about why that can be a good and a bad thing as well. All right, by default, CSU Replay Panopto is available as a tool link in every subject site that gets provisioned session after session at CSU. By default, it is hidden and in your nav bar. I feel like it's down the bottom of the nav bar these days when the sites get pushed out die. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, it's generally down the bottom.
That's it. So if you're going to be using it and you want the students to see it, two different things. If you want the students to see it, you'll need to unhide it and you're going to need to drag it in the nav bar up to where you want it to appear for you for your own convenience. A lot of people generally tend to situate that within the community area, the learning community area of a subject site, but again, it's at your own discretion. All right, we'll be talking about two elements of the Panopto product today, the recorder itself, which we use for making our own videos, and also the storage aspect, which we use for organizing where our content is kept and how that works. So look, before we get into the actual tool set and our exemplars, etc., I have three questions that I would like you to think about yourself, and those are as follows. When you have video, where do you want it to go? Are you just making it so that you can give people a link at some point, or do you have an intended destination for it? How long do you want it to be around? Is it something that you're just using for this session, for example, only for a particular group of students? Do you want it to be an indefinite part of your learning materials, for example? So it's important to consider. And how do you want it to appear to the stakeholders? Is a hyperlink okay? Do you want it to be embedded within the learning materials? So there's a video player sitting within the content. Do you want them to go to a home folder, for example, where they can actually see all the videos one on top of the other, so that the appearance of all of your video is important in choosing which tool we use for this purpose. See, I could turn around and provide an answer that points to Zoom for each of these questions, for example. Where do I want the students to get the video? Well, I want them to get it inside the Zoom tool. Okay, how long do I want it to be there? Well, it's just for this session. And what do I want it to look like? Well, it's that, current recorded cloud recordings video tab. So there are ways that you can point to other tools depending on your answer. And that's why we're looking at Panopto today in comparison to Zoom particularly. But I think by showing you some of these exemplars, you'll get a better feel for why I'm asking these questions. All right, so as they say, here's some I've prepared earlier. These are different use cases for the way that Panopto is used. The first one, we're looking at a Panopto folder within a subject site where the academic has recorded a huge range of video over time, from things like introductions, lectures, materials to sit within their topics, so learning material videos. If we keep moving through there, we'll see there are tutorials captured in there. Again, more lectures. Sometimes they're capturing slides. Other times you will find that they've used it for purposes like video that's been captured on field trips, etc. So external video that's been captured somehow and uploaded into the subject site. So we'll see that there's quite a variety of video that has been added and just uploaded into this subject site to be used and accessed somewhere. But this is the storage location where it's been kept. Moving right along, we have a subject site where the students have been provided with assessment scaffolding. In this case, a breakdown of the assessment task for the students. So pre-recorded. And if I'll just check my share settings to make sure that I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Yep, sound is good. Let's do that. So the academic in this case is talking about a text analysis.
Points here. What can we see here? Okay, first of all, 20%. So
all right, so in other words, they're grabbing items from the subject outline and actually running through their own explanation process, etc. For students, I'm sure that you've been through this process many times, and probably multiple times within the same session, sometimes with students asking for you to unpack a particular assessment item for them or parts of it. In this case, the academics preempted that by doing a screencast where they've opened, I guess, a Word document in this instance, or a PDF from what I'm looking at here. And, they might have marked it up or annotated parts, but they've recorded that, put it in Panopto, and then embedded it within a content area of the subject site. This is a pretty common approach to using this tool, screen capture, screencasts. You've got the head in the box down in the corner here. The academics had their webcam on, for example. So you get, I guess, a level of personalization and engagement where you can see your academic talking at you and explaining the task to you. So short of being there in person with someone, that's a way to increase things like teacher presence, I guess, in a relatively safe way. There's no one around looking at you while you're doing it, etc. So that's pretty common. Did I see anyone coming off mute there, Nicole Mitchell?
Yeah, that's me, Lachlan. I've always got a question. So did they create this particular video in, say, Screencast-O-Matic and then put it in Panopto, or did they create this screencast in Panopto? Can
Very
Panopto
good question.
do that?
Are you saying that because they've got a highlight there inside
yes,
it?
that's what I was
you've
wondering. I thought that
it.
looks like Screencast-O-Matic, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, look, potentially they may have uploaded it into Panopto and embedded it. So you can't highlight like that within the tool set for Panopto. So that's it's a strong guess. They have done a screen capture, which we'll look at how to do in Panopto. But yes, that particular aspect of highlighting things isn't part of the Panopto tool set. But we can see from the embedded video that there are a few affordances that we get from that video. We can hit the handlebars here and get full screen happening if we need to. The student's able to hit the download button and get a local file version of the embedded video if they want to. We also find that they can play it at a faster speed. I've heard about this as a thing, but I'm not really across it. So if you're familiar with students listening to things at faster speeds and still capturing it, let me in on the secret, because I don't know how it works. I do hear that it happens though. Maybe it's a workout thing at the gym. I don't know, but I haven't done it myself. We also find that there's a continuum underneath, so you can drag, obviously, the progress bar for the video along and move to whichever point you need to. So there are bits and pieces that we can do with the playback as such of the embedded video. Moving right along, in this subject, well, this is a course site actually, they've worked through a process. So this is a screen capture again, using Panopto, that explains to students how to enroll.
Hello Pathway students, this is Sandra Fisher and I'm your course coordinator, and this is a quick video on how to enrol in your subjects to get ready for session 1.
And I see that highlight again, Nicole, very interesting. So again, these are videos that have been made a couple of years back. So I wonder if when Screencast-O-Matic was available to staff, for example, that it was popular for doing that process. In this case, the course coordinator is working through a process that students need to be able to do, how to enroll in subjects in the student portal. So again, screencasts. Let's keep going. In this case, we have, what have we got? There's going to be video here somewhere. Maybe not. Okay. In this case, the academic has put together an approach around a particular text type, a legal memo. Now, they were using, until this session, they were using Panopto for this process, certainly to record the video and make the video. But we'll see now that they have shifted where they wanted the video to live into YouTube, which I think is an interesting question. And if you've worked with either the toll process for content creation or on a course build in more recent times, for example, or subject build, there are questions around where you want your content to live. And the reason I'm showing you that is because they've created the video originally in Panopto and then moved it across into a different platform to embed the content in the subject site. So, that consideration around where you want it to live and how long you want it to be there comes into play. That's why, again, we consider that when we create the video and where we want it to be housed. Yeah, it's a good question, Tori. I think what we'll find is that they've been put on an unlisted site, at that point so that it can be embedded. So they would need a direct link to the video to be able to watch it. And at that point, they'd have to be getting that from the subject site, watching the YouTube video, playing it back, and then expanding it to get a link and then sharing it externally. And I would probably suggest that at that point, if they've gone to that much trouble, they could have got that link in that video any number of ways, not just from YouTube, even from Panopto, you could be capturing it and distributing at that point. There is a copyright disclaimer that's at the beginning of all of the videos that are made in Panopto. And even the ones that are moved across into YouTube will have to have that disclaimer on them as well. It's a very good question.
Because can I just say, because my understanding is that you can't embed a video from YouTube, you can only supply the link so students watch it independently, and that you can't drag content across and embed it as a video for students to watch.
It's done a lot at this uni. I have to say there's a lot of YouTube embedded in hundreds, if not thousands of subject sites. So I'll need to chase that up and find out more. I don't have a definitive copyright answer for you, but I can tell you in terms of practice here that it is done prolifically.
Okay.
At the
Yeah,
uni.
I'll just chime in there too, that my understanding, Tori, is that you can't broadcast, play a YouTube video in a Zoom meeting live or record it, because then you're broadcasting that video. It's got something to do with that. And I believe that the use of YouTube videos in subject sites is okay because they're not being broadcast as such.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
that's my understanding, but I could be wrong, because
So in
we'd be in
terms
a
of
lot of trouble if that's the case, because we put YouTube videos in subjects all the time.
Okay. Yeah, I had something that I wanted to play in a tutorial, and I checked the copyright, and the library said you can play it in a tutorial, but you can't record it, and you can't. Well, they were suggesting that I could only provide a link to the video, but I couldn't actually put the video on the i2 site, or I may have misinterpreted that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll need to get some clarification around it. Sorry, Ree.
Oh, I was just going to say, Tori, I think that that's also what I was told. And I know that before CSU, I was working at Fed Uni, and it was the same thing. It was common practice that it was all embedded, but it didn't necessarily mean that it was what was meant to be happening. And I had the same understanding that it was only meant to be a link. But I've also found the same that in all of the sort of co-teaching I'm doing, that they do seem to be embedded. So maybe we do need some clarification on that.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I'm happy to follow that up and send something out to everyone as well. My understanding has always been that if I was going to be playing back anything from YouTube in a Zoom recording, that it wasn't an issue as long as I wasn't recording it, because that still counts as use of our learning spaces, for example, for delivery. It's the same as if we were running a tutorial, for example, with students. But if I'm capturing it and distributing it at that point, then it's an issue. So that's why I pause recordings, or I'm not recording at all. So for example, when you guys join a Zoom meeting at the start, for those that get here sort of before time, etc., and I'm playing music in the room, straight off YouTube, but I'm not recording it, basically. Yeah, so I'm not distributing at that point. Okay, in this case, we have a welcome to the subject, which I've seen various forms of used around the traps. In this case, Julie's just got her webcam on, and it's, I guess, a more personal introduction from the subject coordinator to the subject that they've placed inside a welcome folder, I'm guessing. Yeah, well, in this case, a welcome page or a welcome folder. So they've recorded just themselves, introducing themselves and providing more context around the subject. In this law subject, for example, they have recorded a combination predominantly of slide-based screen captures. So you've got a narrated slideshow, I guess, where they're providing topics, concept lectures within the subject. And usually I know when Kim makes these, she doesn't give the students access to the replay folder. These are embedded within the learning materials. So this is just them being stored there, for example. And here's one of them. Okay, so in this case, they have embedded, again, series of narrated slides.
This is the lecture for topic 7, where we consider the duties that lawyers owe to other members of the profession, duties of civility and courtesy.
Okay, so in that case, she has recorded the lecture separately and then embedded it within the learning materials. So this is pretty common as well, pretty common way to use Panopto. And what have I got in here? This looks like my folder. Okay, I'll get to that shortly because we'll open the actual tool set and start walking through the use of the tool. All right. At this point, I'm going to stop for a second and add a cheat sheet for the tool into the chat pod for you. But if you've got questions or comments, etc., while I'm doing that, now is a great time for them. Or Di, if you'd like to chime in as well with any of your observations at this point. Can I ask Di, in terms of jobs that get referred to you or problems or queries, if you had to summarize or generalize what they kind of look like for you coming from academics, from the learning and teaching side, what do they generally look like?
Yeah, look, thanks, Lachlan. A lot of the issues that we seem to have happen at the beginning of every session where videos have been copied from one session to the next session in the content. And then what happens is when you copy a video, well, previously there's been some changes to copy, which we can talk about later, it creates a new link for that video. So what people are doing are copying the videos over into the new sessions folder, but not then looking at the content itself. So those links or the embedded videos or the links that you've got will have now changed, because what you've done is copied that content over, which is actually copying last session's links over. So then the student goes to click on it and you think, well, it's fine, I've got the links, the videos in that session, but that's actually got a whole new link because it's created a new video, so it's created a new link to that video. So when the student is clicking on that video that's sitting in that session, it's actually pointing them back to last session's videos. And that's why we get a lot where they say, you know, they're requesting access. You might get emails where it says the student has requested access to the videos, or the students will log jobs that they can't get in, and it's because continually copying that content over actually then is creating those new links. And unless you go in and re-update all the embeds and the links within the I2 site, then the student is actually, you know, pointing back to the last session. And sometimes they're pointing back to 2 years ago. And so we are looking at ways of changing that, but it makes more sense to actually have a permanent type folder, and at each session just be repointing your site to that folder, so that all your links don't change and you're not then doing this copy process continually and all that sort of stuff. It does mean that you then have to manage that folder and get rid of videos that you may not want down the, you know, at some point, so that you don't have a massive folder, but it just saves. We are constantly, that student experience with getting access to videos each session, I'm noticing is not the greatest for, you know, a lot of students. So that would be the biggest bugbear that I've seen and been trying to work on, and had discussions with Lachlan and that as to how, and we are doing some trials in areas for that, but that's probably one of the biggest things, just to be aware of what you do. If you do, there's nothing wrong with copying that over, but if you do copy that video over, then you actually need to go in and check that your links are still working, and it'll work for you because you've got access to that video from being in last session and next session, but a student is not going to have access. So that's the thing, the tricky thing. You can look and go, oh yeah, they're all displaying and coming up fine, but you've got access to last session as well, so they are going to look fine. It's a student that doesn't have access to last session that comes in, that it's going to come up with a black screen and go, you do not have access to this video. So
yeah, we'll have a look at some of the workarounds with that particular scenario as well shortly. But I would like to point out as well that this is a problem in transition, because as you may have heard, if the university moves across to a new learning management system in you know, sort of over the next 18 months or so, as we move into that kind of environment, one of the base premises that we're moving towards is the use of a master site for all of our subjects. So a single subject site that doesn't change session after session after session, which means that things like where our video lives and how it looks within our content isn't a session-based phenomenon. It is permanent and set in that location. So you won't have to worry about moving your videos over somewhere else or re-embedding them or relinking them or resetting up content. It will stay the same, but in fact, what happens is that the student cohorts are the transitionary element. They get enrolled, they do the subject, they stay in it for however long we need to have them in there, and then the next cohort is rolled in and out, but we don't keep recreating the content. And we have a lot of kind of flow-on issues here that we deal with our learning technologies that are a result of that setup process that we have in place at the moment. All right, let's get into the tool set itself. I am going to open up a CSU replay folder that I have in a side of mine. It does look the same for everybody. As you'll see in that cheat sheet that I provided in the chat pod, if you can't see CSU replay in your navigation bar, the process for adding it is very, very simple. As long as your edit mode is on, you can go down to the tool link option, give it a name, let's call it CSU replay, and hit the drop down under the type menu and you'll see Panopto course tool application. At that point, you add it into your subject site, your org site, your course site, whatever. Okay, you can add this tool in very quickly and easily, and that will put it into your site. Once it's added to your site, I'll talk about configuration and things afterwards, but I want to look at the actual interface for the recorder. The most important part that you're going to see is this big red create button that sits above. If you click that, you'll see several options. I'll just explain each one in brief. The first one, Panopto for Windows in my case, it'll be for Mac if you're on a Mac, will launch the recorder tool itself. It doesn't launch instantly. There's usually a slight delay whilst you wait for the recorder to load. It can be frustrating at times, I found, but I don't know why there's that delay, but it certainly has happened to me for years, no matter which computer I've been on. So I'm going to click on that, and while we wait for it to load, I'll keep talking. The other options that we have going on are underneath. Panopto Capture launches a browser-based version of the product, which I personally don't use. It doesn't have as many features as the recorder and is sort of like a light version. This middle option, however, upload media, is used a lot, and that basically allows you to upload most types of audio and video files that people will use at all the common ones, AVI, MP4, God, all the rest. I can't remember particular file names right at the moment, but I have uploaded and have seen students upload a lot of different file types into here, video file types, and it will convert those into a format that will allow the video to be used and viewed wherever you want it to be at that point, but it'll sit inside your Panopto folder. Once you click upload media, look, all it's going to do is open up this interface that allows you to either browse for the file or to drag and drop it. And when we set tasks for students where we want them to share media, for example, for assessment tasks, that's what they're going to be doing as well. They'll be using that option of upload media from here. We'll get into the student assignment folder prospect in a minute. The other options, creating playlists, etc., I don't really use this tool for, but you certainly can do that. But the question is, when you create a playlist, where are you going to put it and what do you want them to do with it? So that's kind of a separate question for us to consider. You can create new folders as well inside Panopto if you want to organize your content a little bit. Maybe it's to do with particular topics or assessment types, as you can see that I've got up the top here. But you don't have to do it necessarily through create a new folder. You can also use this thumbnail over here, add folder. It does exactly the same thing. So you can add as many folders as you want into your Panopto area. The other area of the Panopto folder I want to draw your attention to is in the top right-hand corner. Two things to look at. We've got the settings cog, which will affect all of the files and folders inside the folder you're looking at. So I'm at the top level. Let's call it, well, we'll call it the top level. If I click on the cog, this will affect all of the files inside this folder. So if you want to change, for example, the share settings for every video inside the folder, you can do it at this level. So for example, I've got my overview, which includes the name that I can change if I need to, but I can also go down here to share, and it will tell me at the moment what the share settings are for the folders and the files inside here. So if you ever need to change the settings for one of your videos or a whole folder, you're looking for the share option, and you probably will be changing that to something along the lines of down here. Who can access this folder? For me, I've got it set as anyone who has the link. This way I avoid any problems with the content session after session after session. It's not bound to a particular subject or cohort or group of students or instructors. It's just anyone who has the link. That's my personal preference. You may find that you have them bound to particular cohorts. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, but the share setting is the one that a lot of people go looking for their videos if students are having problems accessing it, which Di was talking about before, making sure that videos are visible to others. So you'll be looking for share often. The other thing I want to point out under the overview area, that first tab, is that if you want to create an assignment folder for students to use this product, this is where you find it. In the folder settings, you can create one assignment folder inside each folder. Right now, I'm not sure if I'm being entirely clear here. I can create one at the top level, and in fact, it's called Lachlan Kalache Sandpit, so that's the name of the subject site, assignments. But if I also go inside a subfolder, like this sample folder, I can go into the settings here and create another assignment folder. So the reason I'm raising this is because maybe you're going to have multiple assessments or areas where you want students to be able to create or submit, and you want them distinctly separated. Well, the way to do it is to create folders for each of those purposes, and then create an assignment folder inside each. And then it will allow your students to use different areas to create those different tasks. Is that making sense? I don't know a lot of people that have multiple tasks where students are required to upload and create video or audio, but it does happen. All right, let's launch this, this recorder interface. If you try and do this and it doesn't launch the recorder for you automatically, then you can hit Open Panopto. If you've never done this before and used it, then you'll need to download it with the button is underneath and install it. The process takes 30 seconds. It's pretty quick. All right, what we are looking at here at the moment is the Panopto interface, the recorder interface, and I'm going to expand this a bit. Let's talk about each of the different zones of the recorder interface. Most importantly, top left-hand corner, big red record button. Once we click that, we'll get a countdown and then we can start recording. The name that the recording sits in is up the top, the folder that it sits in, and underneath is the name of the file. So my first piece of advice here is give it a name that has meaning for you, that's going to allow you to retrieve this and find this file easily, rather than the default date stamp. Okay, so if it's a lecture, call it a lecture. If it's, you know, for a particular week in the session, give it the week name, for example. Whatever is meaningful for you, it's probably worthwhile changing the name when you create the file in the first instance, and it'll just keep that. So test PD recording for Panopto PD. All right, at that point, you can change the name later on, but I always find just when I make it in the first instance is probably the best way to do it. Then working our way down from the top left, we're dealing with primary sources, which Panopto calls basically audio and video. Firstly, have I got any video, or in this case, a video input, which is my webcam from my laptop, rather than my Zoom webcam, which is you over there. So make sure that you have got the right video input selected. So you can see there's the one that I'm using for Zoom at the moment, which is my live cam. My webcam is over there on my laptop, or if you don't want your face, no head in the box at all, you can click on none. Okay, so that will remove the video inputs. Sometimes people make, like those narrated lecture slides that we looked at before in the exemplars, they didn't have a head in the box, just the voice and the slides. So that's how you do that. You switch the video source off. Make sure your audio is set to the right input. So in this case, for me, it's capturing my headset. Interestingly, you can use the same audio input in Zoom at the same time as we use it in Panopto. There's no problem with the same source for audio being captured in different places, but video, you can't use your webcam in a Zoom session and the same webcam in Panopto. If you're curious about that. Quality, for me, I always leave it on ultra. It's going to result in a better quality video file, but the file size will be larger. If video file size is a problem for you, you can switch this back to standard and it will reduce the size of the file. But personally, I always leave it on ultra. I don't have any concerns about the size of the video in Panopto because we don't have a storage cap for this product. Di, I'm looking at you. Is that right? Am I giving the false information at this point?
No, that's right at the moment. That's our contract at the moment. So hopefully it stays that way.
All right. So as opposed to other solutions that we have for video, if you tried to put video into a subject site not in Panopto, then file size is going to be a problem. Okay, so that's why using this tool is an attractive solution if you've got video going into the site. This box here about capture computer audio, this is an interesting one because it means that any other audio that's playing, for example, in your ears, if you want that to be part of the recording, like a Zoom session, for example, when you guys are talking, if I wanted your voices to be captured, I would need that box to be checked. If you're playing back media from somewhere else, and I'm not talking about copyright issues at this point in time, but if you're capturing audio from somewhere else and you wanted it to be in your Panopto recording, this box would have to be ticked. Otherwise, the only sound that's going into this thing is your voice. That's it. All right, so look, at this point underneath, we get into secondary sources, which is kind of, again, gets back to the purpose of what you're making the recording for. We're making a screencast, so I want to capture my main screen, which happens to be this one. You can turn on this previewer down here, which will give us a box inside a box inside a box, but it is the right screen. So as long as you're sure that you've got the right screen, you can turn the preview off again. If you're using multiple monitors, you'll probably find people shift the recorder over onto another screen, and then that way they can see the preview. If you're using, you can also choose to capture a second screen. So for example, if I turn that on the second screen and show you the preview, we've got a bit of YouTube in the background, the Zoom video, etc. So you can, the preview will just give you the heads up that you're capturing the right space when you make the recording. And if you're using an external video source, like a document camera, for those of you that are doing that, you can add that in here and also capture that. All right, so the interface is pretty simple. You just work your way down from top to bottom, left to right, make sure your sources are okay, and we're ready to make our video. So I'm going to hit record. We're going to get a countdown, or we'll get straight into it in this case. And so we're making a recording of everything that's happening on this screen at the moment. So I'm going to shift this over and say, right, yeah, we're working through this. I'm going to take you through this subject site, etc. So it's capturing that video as we go. This is your screencast, and the students will hear the voice and see whatever motion, screens, etc. that are being captured as part of that product. And when we're ready and we're finished, you can either pause it and continue later on, or we can hit stop. And we get a message or a prompt at the end that says, right, that's done. Do we want to trash it and go again? Or do we just want to hit done, at which point it's going to start publishing? You get this sort of manage recordings list, which gives you a bit of a progress update on what's happening with it. This is the one that we just made that I've uploaded, but it'll also show you the more recent ones that you've made. And it's starting to publish that, but I can't really see that from this screen. If you wanted to use the recorder again and make another one, you can use this tab and go straight back to the recorder. But to be honest, right now, what I'm going to do is minimize this and have a look at my site that I launched this from. If I refresh this, and we go into the folder that I started making it from, that's where the recording is going to live. We'll see that it's already there. It's only a very short video after all. I can click on it to play it. We get the copyright disclaimer at the beginning. Or we'll get straight into it in this case. And so we're making a recording of everything that's happening on this screen at the moment. Okay, so you get the idea. We get our screencast, our video published quickly and available for us to do things with. At the moment, it just sits in the folder. We can see how long it is. I also get access, if I hover my mouse, to the settings for the particular video, the share settings. We'll get into all of that, but first I want to show you the edit function, so how we can edit our videos. This is probably one of the only tools that staff have available by default for editing videos here. So that's another reason why Panopto is quite an attractive tool, because it will allow you, with any video that you upload into your folder, to edit it. We can't edit really in Zoom. It's a superficial type of editing. So this is one of the only tools we can do video editing in. We'll see it's loaded the video in my browser for me with a continuum underneath. And we'll see the scissors icon underneath, which will allow me to left click anywhere within the continuum. You can left click and drag, and it will crop and cut out those sections of the video if you don't want them, just by left clicking and dragging anywhere you like, and it will allow you to remove those sections. So if I click here, for example, it's moved the video to that point. I can hit play and say, right, yeah, we're working through this. I'm going to take you through this subject site. I can go, oh, I hate, you know, this video from section 10, from 10 seconds to 15 seconds into the video. So I'm going to left click and drag from there. And just by highlighting it, it's going to crop that video the moment that I hit this button up here, apply. So you make your crops and your highlights underneath. The scissors icon is highlighted here. And then when I'm ready with those and I want those removed from the end product, I hit apply and it will republish the video, applying the changes. I don't want to close the editor. I've got other things I want to look at, but it's now made those changes. And if you download the video, it includes those crops. It's gone. You can revert the video back to the original. I want to point that back. Students can't do that, but they can download the video file and it will only give them the current version. But let's look at what else the editor can do. Over here on the left-hand side, we'll see some details for the video at the top, such as its title, which we can change in here as well. I don't particularly use tags in this tool, but if you're organizing your content with tags, you can do that in here. You can add in a table of contents if you like, but this idea of smart chapters is about you identifying points within the video that people can go to. This makes more sense if you're using slides, for example, PowerPoint slides with this tool, because maybe they want to jump to particular sections. When you've just recorded a screencast, it's a bit harder. You may actually have to determine points of the video that that you create smart chapters for, but you'll need to play around with that a little bit. All of the Panopto videos allow you to turn on captioning. So if you want captions underneath, the students will be able to do this by default when they watch those videos embedded. If I can find some of the ones that we were looking at before, this will do. In the playback, that one doesn't have any. Of course it doesn't. All right, let me find one here.
What you see, that's it.
Why am I not finding captions here? Is it not on for all of them, Di? I feel like I've always see captioning available in Panopto now, but maybe these are older videos.
Yeah, it might only be recent change that has made it available in all, Lachlan, if they're old.
Yeah, okay. Well, they should see a CC button at the bottom of their videos, the same as what we have with Zoom, and that'll turn on the transcription playback. But might be a more recent addition for the tool. You can, you'll see that it's generated the captions automatically if we click on this captions menu on the left. So they are available, but that must be, I suppose, in more recent years. So me looking at older videos is why we can't see a captions button. You can also import captions. There's an option here to replace them with automatic captions, which is exactly what it's used here. So I'm not sure why that would that feature would still be available. But previously we had to actually request third parties to do captioning for us. So I think the toolset still has some of those older functions available. You can add slides to your recording. So if you've recorded your screen, but you also have PowerPoint slides to go with the recording underneath, you can add those here and they will be attached to the recording as a separate source that students can flick between. So they can watch the video playback, they can also look at the slides. Or in the first instance, you can actually choose to record not your screen, but PowerPoint slides. I don't generally use the PowerPoint slide capture, but Nicole Mitchell, have you ever used that feature before? You're muted. Hang on.
Sorry. No, I haven't. Not in Panopto, but I have done it in Screencast-O-Matic, and I did notice that our license is expired, I think, from that. So I'll have to have a play in this one. Yeah,
I see it done occasionally with some academics that want to actually use the slides as the recording point. But the reason I usually advise people to record their screen and open whatever it is, whether it's PowerPoint, PDFs, web pages, to make their recordings, is that it makes the editing easier. If you make changes to a PowerPoint slide deck for cropping, the slides don't make sense anymore because you've cut sections out and the slide transition as such doesn't make sense. So that's usually why I suggest you capture a screen.
Lachlan, can I just add something there? Where it is handy at times if you've captured your screen with your PowerPoints, and then we've had a few lecturers where a slide in that screen is become old, or they're not allowed to show that anymore because of copyright or whatever, and they don't want to do the whole screen again. What we've done is uploaded those slides as a presentation, and you can force the system to flick from your video over to that secondary, so to then you put the slide in that same transition and it flicks over, and you don't even know it when you're watching the video because the audio is still continuing. It's flicked over to that slide to then put the new slide in and then flicks back to the video. So that's generally where I've used adding the slides to the presentation, where you want to make that change to the screen capture and not having to do the whole thing again. So that's a handy little thing that you can do.
And be done. All right. The thing I want to show you next in the editor is quizzes. Okay. In this tool, it does allow you to add an interactive component to your video, to your recorded video, where they have several different question types, whether it's multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blanks. So pretty simple. But you can insert these into different spots in your recording, and it will stop the recording, get the student to respond to the question, and then you can determine whether or not they get to keep watching until they get it right, for example, or that it just keeps playing. But that functionality is in here. You can also provide some feedback or an explanation based on their response underneath. Some academics that I've spoken to using this think it's potentially, I suppose, a bit of a gimmick, but not amazing. And others I've found have spent significant amounts of time creating their resources in the first instance, and they want those sorts of prompts. They want the watching of the exercise to be something that involves the audience doing something as well. So it depends. You can insert this sort of activity in H5P activities, for those of you familiar with those as well. There are activity types in that tool set that allow you to make interactive video. But Panopto has its own relatively basic level of interactivity that you can build in as well. So if I went in here and said, yep, okay, I want a multiple choice question here. Actually, we'll make it true, false. I say, right, horses can fly. True or false? Yes, they can. And if they give the correct answer, of course they can. And I'm done. At that point, we have our first quiz question. We'll get straight into it in this case. And so we're making a recording. I just want to look at where that quiz occurs in the playback. At the moment, it's happening at 000. You can change that and shift where the quiz occurs. I just need to drag it, is my recollection. Where's the quiz item? Help me out here, people, if you remember how to do this.
I think you need to go to the next phase of it, or go done.
Done, yeah.
And then
Maybe.
you'll get the option up the top there
Hey,
to say where it is.
Thank you very much. That's why we have other people who know more in here. So let's look at, 10 seconds in. And then they get prompted with the quiz question in the playback of the video, remembering that we're ultimately going to embed these, for example. All right. And then they prompt come up with their response. I think when we embed it, we'll get a look at this. Does it still keep the quizzes when we embed, Di? I feel like it does.
Yeah. Okay,
great. All right. So look, then you get some behavioral options here. Do you want them to be able to retake the quiz? Do they get a grade? I guess they're going to get the answer, yes or no. And do we want to stop them from progressing in the video until they get it right? So maybe that's an option. All right, let's
Lachlan,
finish this.
before you move on, just
we'll get straight into it in this case. Go ahead.
It's gone back to the 000 for the quiz position, because I think maybe you put 10 minutes, not 10 seconds.
Did I?
I think so. I don't know. I can't see the...
Oh, you may have a point.
Yeah, so if you hit done again, and then we should get, is that when we...
All right, the behavior, okay.
Is it SS?
So that's hour, minutes. Let's get into seconds. Yeah, now I'm with you. How about that?
Do you think? I don't know.
That looks better. Okay, now it's kept it, I think. If we finish, there it is. Okay, thank you. As we go. All right, thank you very much. All right, so look, as far as I'm concerned, I've made the edits that I want to make to this video. So I'm going to go back to my folder where the video is sitting. Did I apply these? We'll just apply those settings. I now want to look at the prospect of sharing my video to others. Okay, so I can click on the share option that's next to the video. And what I'm really interested in underneath, there's two ways that we can share this. One of them is this link button. And we'll find that there is a button for copy link, but if you're paranoid about it, you can also left click and drag to highlight the link underneath. Do you know if they fixed that bug, Di, that used to be there with the copy link button?
Yep, it works now.
Okay, beauty. In that case, click on the button, copy the link. And if I wanted to share the video with people, for example, in our Zoom meeting, you can share the link and then they get access to the video. But what I'm interested in now is actually making this content available in the subject site. So I'm going to click on embed. And if we scroll down a little bit, there's a few options on how the embed works, but really what I'm interested in is the embed code. I want to get this into a subject site. So I'm going to click copy the embed code, find a section in a subject site. I think I'll add it in here and then delete it. You can build content, for example, a new content item. Click inside your content. At this point, because I'm working with code, I need to turn on the code button over here, source code. And now I can Control V and paste. There's my embed code for my Panopto video. And you'll see it's already got the copyright disclaimer ready whilst the video's loading. I can now submit that. Let's see how that video behaves inside my content. Just wait for it to load. I just want to see if that quiz plays back. and we hit play. You'll see there's the captions button that we were talking about before. So it is available on all the videos. So I can turn that on, and then as I'm talking, you'll see the auto captions across the bottom. Hit play. So I'm going to shift this over. And then 10 seconds in, we get prompted with our quiz. All right, now I've got to respond and go, that's wrong, obviously. Whoops, 0 out of 1. So there's my quiz results. Apparently, I'm going to need to give the correct answer. Well, hey, there we go. And now I can continue the video. So it's capturing that video as we go. All right, so that's how easy it is essentially to create the video, to record it, to edit it, and then distribute it either via link or embedding. The other option for embedding for the curious, I'm going to edit that same content item and get rid of what I've done before just to show you. We used to have an option inside Interact 2 when we were editing called a mashup tool. There was a button for mashups, and Panopto was a mashup that you could add. That has disappeared from this editor interface, but you can still access all of your Panopto videos and libraries using this plus button over here on the right. And if you scroll down, you've got the Panopto video option here. And that will allow you, in fact, to browse through all of your Panopto folders that you have access to locate any of your videos in those libraries and then embed them. So if we remember, for example, that I made, the first place it's going to look is the subject site that you're in. So that's why it's bringing up all these videos. But I can hit these drop downs and find all of my folders from the Panopto backend. So for example, I made that video inside the sample folder. There it is. I click it next to it and hit insert, and we get exactly the same result, the embedded videos. So that if you don't want to work with embed codes, etc., you don't have to deal with any of that. As long as you've made the video in Panopto, you can locate it using that plus button and Panopto video, and then you'll be able to embed that content within your sites. It's pretty straightforward. There aren't a lot of tools that are that easy to get video into, create it, get it in there, and get it embedded as quickly and as easily as this tool. And look, of course, we're at time. I've obviously spoken way over the point. However, I will talk for a few more minutes on some of the other aspects of this tool. Particularly, I just want to point out that your videos inside CSU Replay, if we can find a Panopto folder, when you hover your mouse over any of the videos, you also have access to a stats button. And that's another feature of this tool that might be attractive to you. Because it's integrated with i2, with Blackboard, we are able to get statistics on how much the video has been accessed by our students. So I'm going to change this to any time rather than the last 30 days. Thanks, Di.
No worries. Thanks. Bye.
You'll also be able to find, if you're curious about who's been accessing your videos and how often, as long as they're getting it through the subject site, through i2, you'll get these stats. And better, you'll also be able to find out who. So at that point underneath, you get the names of the students because they've accessed it through the i2 site. We also get access to the statistics. How much have they watched? When did they see it? How much of it did they complete? Did they watch the whole thing? So you might want to work back from this scenario of students saying, oh, but I did watch it. Right, well, according to this, not so much. It is powerful, but you have to obviously make sure that their only way to access it is through the subject site. Because if you give them a hyperlink to this video somewhere else, these stats will not work. So they got to access the video from within the i2 site, and then you get these stats. You got to work back from that kind of outcome. Okay, look, I'll stop there for a second, as I know people are probably going to need to take off, etc. But there are obviously, there's more to learn about Panopto, and I'm happy if people have got a particular scenario they want to talk through about using the tool. I'm happy to chat about that, etc. But for those of you still left in here, have you got any particular comments or questions that you would like me to talk about this tool? Because I could probably go on for a while. Not so much? Nicole?
Just thanks, Lachlan. We were working on the area of specialization, and one of them, I was on the video creation team. So this has been very useful. No doubt we'll have plenty more chats about that when that ramps up again, the work on that. So that's very good. And I think this thing about video at the moment, the focus has been very much on, Zoom recordings and things like that. But I think watching a live Zoom recording is not as productive if you didn't attend the meeting as having a really well put together video with those interactive elements as well for engagement. So yeah, definitely a lot of scope there. So
Yeah.
thank you. And I learned a lot today. So
I'm glad. Yeah, look, that
Yeah.
question, there is that tension between Panopto and Zoom, absolutely. And they have completely different use case scenarios as well.
Yeah,
Both are
yeah.
are valid. The storage question, if the videos are going to go on, the way that it displays, because we can't embed Zoom. So if it's going to feature within the learning materials at all, of the resources, you can't do that in Zoom. It can't be embedded. That, as I said, the long-term storage option, the tracking, the stats, we can't get that in Zoom in the same way for our students. So there are absolutely use cases for Panopto versus Zoom. The question is raised all the time, and DIT is certainly scrutinizing the money that is spent on these tools. Like, we're talking six figures plus for our subscription every year for these products. So if they can find a way to say, no, we can do all of that in one, then they will. So it's absolutely up to the learning and teaching practitioners, etc., to put forward scenarios and reasons why we do need both.
And I think if we're shifting to that LMS where they have those master subject sites, then this is the Panopto. Having that really good, well curated series of Panopto videos is definitely another strong point in terms of making sure that when these are created, they're really good and sustainable as well. And it will ultimately save money because people aren't recreating, reinventing the wheel. And I like that option that you can edit out bits and insert a different slide in as well. I didn't know you could do that. So that's good.
We don't have a lot of tools available on the ground for educators to use for editing video. So you can talk to IT people and media techs and say, oh, we use Elements, or we use this, or we use that. It's like, most people don't have access to those tools. So editing a video is actually a relatively tricky proposition, without paying for it. So, and
the movie editor in Windows,
it's gone.
I tried to use that. No, the latest one has got the app for, you can edit the video, but a 3-minute video, I did one on the weekend, mucking around with that. A 3-minute video would not process. It was less, I had to make it less than, I think it was 2.8 minutes or something like that. Otherwise it wouldn't finish it off. So I don't know what I did wrong, but yeah, I did have a play in Panopto because I was trying to create this video. But,
yeah, absolutely.
It was great functionality. It was really good. You put music in and text and overlays. I did push it to its limits, but it was very frustrating. So
have we got some other questions in the audience, Tori?
Yeah, I was watching this. So I teach physio students, and I found this really groovy thing on YouTube. A series of videos have been made at a university in America where they've just looked at someone walking on a treadmill, and they've slowed it down, and then they've highlighted all the muscles in the leg and things like that. So you can really see, describing gait, it's really bland if it's on paper, but when you can see it in action and you can slow it down. And but I don't know whether Panopto, how would I do that? Would I take a video of it and then somehow upload it into Panopto and then send it back into a subject site? Or I don't know, how would you?
I guess some of the things you're talking about there, like different playback speeds and highlighting and parts of the video, you're not going to be able to do in Panopto is the answer. However, we've got digital media techs within the Division of Learning and Teaching that you can log a job with, and they will be able to produce that sort of effect in the videos. So basically you work with them and say, I want a video that does this sort of thing. And because they've got access to the suite of video editing tools,
Okay.
Now, whether you want interactivity in terms of people being able to click on things, they can help with that as well. There's a
Okay.
whole, they're highly skilled individuals with the tools that we're talking about. You just need to put the scenario to them and maybe show them an example of someone else having done it elsewhere, and you can absolutely do it.
Yeah, they can do a really interesting video. It sounds really cool with questions and quizzes in it as well, and clicking and stuff like that. That'd be really a really good way to get that.
Yeah, I just think it's one of those things that if you can see it slowed down and watch it while someone's talking about it, it's like, oh, I get that. Rather, if you just watch a slide, like a PowerPoint slide with a picture of someone, you know, stick figure, it doesn't really. But when you see it, you go, oh, that's what that is. And I don't. So that was my question about the YouTube. Like, someone has actually done this already, and it's quite good. But can I just use that? Yes or no? If it's a no, then we have to sort of recreate it.
I just had a look then at the copyright stuff, and it said that if you can embed YouTube links so they do sit in your Interact site, but you can't record that part of your Zoom tutorial when you're playing that back to the class. You can't record that because then you're broadcasting that video through a different platform. So that's my understanding. The embedding of links of YouTube, because I just looked at the copyright site, the library, that's fine. But it's just that, so you could use those videos in your Interact2 sites. You can even show them in your Zoom recording, but you just have to pause the recording when you show it to them.
Okay.
And then you can give them the link in the chat if they want to watch it.
But it could be embedded in it. So it can't be recorded in a lecture, but it can be embedded in the site for them to watch. Okay, righto.
That's what it said. That's what was on
that
the
sort
site.
of makes sense. Yeah, okay, righto. Okay, thank you, everybody.
No problem. Thanks, Tori.
Okay, I'll see you later.
Cheers. Reed, did you have a question?
No, sorry, my internet dropped out, and so I just came back in. I just wanted to say thank you. That was, as always, that was really helpful, and I particularly liked the quiz thing. I didn't know that that was actually a function, and I can see that that would be really helpful for some of the courses that I'm working on at the moment. I like that idea of being able to do that. So yeah,
absolutely. I think if you're going to put the time into creating the resource, so again, it comes back to those 3 questions at the beginning, because a lot of people, when they're making video, they're not looking at something that necessarily they're going to want to use in a year's time. But if you're going to put the time into producing this thing and make activities within it, etc., to me, that sounds like something that you want to use ongoing.
Yeah, definitely.
As part of your material. So that points towards this tool rather than something else, you know.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great way to do it. And, you know, just anything to try and increase engagement and trying to get them to participate with it, I think is really helpful. So no, thank you so much.
You're welcome. We'll see you at the next one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.